Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Back taking a deep dive into this Nebraska program heading into the 2024 year. Now, last Sunday, we took our deep dive into this Nebraska offensive line. This Sunday, we got the Nebraska defensive line, a unit that for the Nebraska fans that have been rocking with the boys for the last couple months, y'all already know how I feel about this defensive line heading into 2024. And then, Dill, next Sunday, the offensive scale deep dive. We're excited to do that as well. Before we get into this one, just want to say thank you to you guys and a special shout out, as always, to the Nebraska fans. I mean, this is a program that is a program we love talking about. And the amount of support you guys show the boys, all the Go Big Reds in the comments section, that stuff means the world to the fellas. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear from you guys. We learn a ton from you guys in the comment section. What you notice from this Nebraska defensive line in 2023, who you think is breaking out in 2024. We'll chop it up there, Dill. I'm going to give you the T-box here. This Nebraska defensive line heading into 2024, how are we feeling?
I mean, it starts and stops with those two guys up front. I mean, the way Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher play and just dominate the inside of defensive lines, it really does set the tone for that whole defense. And it's not just about like being space heaters, but you kind of look, both are really going to do a good job of getting in the backfield. Ty Robinson, I feel like he makes a ton of tackles from that defensive tackle position. And that is, I think, what makes them unique compared to a lot of teams. A lot of teams like have big physical players on the inside, but they don't penetrate as much. They're not in the backfield. It just feels so hard to like run schemes against Nebraska in a lot of cases because those two are just constantly in the backfield making things happen and being super disruptive.
They consistently reset the line of scrimmage. I mean, you take a look at Nebraska and the success they had stopping the run, only allowing 3 yards per carry. That was sixth best in the country. I mean, it is because of Nash and Ty Robinson resetting the line of scrimmage, kind of blowing up plays before they even start. And Dill, what makes Ty Robinson so special is he's a phenomenal athlete. Not only is he very good at the point of attack, but you talk about moving laterally. I mean, he's exceptional at that. And what excites me most about Nash, and for the Nebraska wrestling fans that follow the team on the mat, I mean, Nash down to 285 on the wrestling mat. Yeah, he's going to get back over to 300 pounds heading into the 2024 year. But you might see a little bit more agility, a little bit more skill set in terms of what he can do in terms of moving laterally.
Because you're right. I think that's what you're looking for him is like being a bit more productive making tackles, because you see how much Ty Robinson does and how much production he kind of brings, and also in the pass rush. Like Nash Hutmacher doesn't have an issue with strength and being able to play physically in the inside, but if he kind of takes the athleticism up a notch and is a little bit more not just disruptive, because he's disruptive at the size he is and how he played last year, but being able to make more tackles and probably step the game up a little bit in the pass rush, I think that makes him a much more complete player. And if those two both play the way Ty Robinson's played, like, I don't know how you deal with those.
I mean, it's one of the best interior defensive lines heading into 2024. There's no doubt about it. Now, I think there's two things that excite you. One, you have some returning production that you feel really good about. Like getting Nash, Ty Robinson coming back to 2024 is massive. Though the reason I think this defensive line that was already so good in 2023 can take that step is because some of the other guys, they're just getting their feet wet, right? Prince Will You, a guy like Cam Lenhart, played exceptionally well for true freshmen in 2023. What does it look like year two for those guys? And we knew Prince Will, that he was a guy that needed to get in the program, put some weight on, kind of get that grown man strength a little bit. You saw that emerge in this Nebraska season in 2023. He's a guy that if you're looking for this unit to take a step in the right direction or another step in the right direction in 2024, I think you're going to see a massive elevated play from guys like Cam Lenhart and Prince Will You on the line of scrimmage.
Well, because you need some more guys on the edge who just win more. And you kind of look at their pass rush win rates on the edge. It's just not high enough. And they were able to manufacture some pressure with blitzes and some other things. But on third and long, it just felt like there were too many of those moments where you had four guys and just not one of them won. And I think that comes from, like, you need really dynamic edge rushers. And I don't think they quite had that last year. Again, you started to see Prince Will You emerge a little bit. I thought against Michigan, for example, you saw a couple really good reps against a really good left tackle in Ladarius Henderson. And he does have that agility, that quickness you're kind of looking for that really puts pressure on offensive linemen and kind of is the prototype of winning in those situations. But him, I think you saw a little bit from MJ Sherman. I'd like to see him kick his pass rush up a little bit. Jamari Butler too. Like if one of those guys can kind of come along on the edge and be a little bit more productive, I think this defensive line, that's one way they take a step, frankly, for kind of next year.
That's the one thing I have kind of highlighted in my list in terms of what Nebraska wants to do in 2024 to take that step is you're Nebraska, you know the recipe, right? You're winning on first and second down, stopping the run. That was consistent. I mean, Nebraska's defense continued to get defenses in those third and long situations. Where does this unit as a whole take that next step is when it's third and long and you're pinning your ears back in those obvious pass rush situations, who is going to be the guy on the outside that wins and creates those negative plays, creates turnovers? I'm looking at Principal U as one of those guys. Dill, I'll say James Williams I doesn't get a ton of buzz when he plays. Like he's got a different kind of burst and bend around the edge. He's another guy that I'm looking for as could be just a lethal pass rusher in those third and long situations. That's kind of where you want to see them take that step. Now, you look at another thing I have in my notes in terms of Nebraska maybe getting better in, and it's the depth on the inside, right? We talk about Nash and we talk about Ty Robinson. Those guys they're dogs. They're one of the best interior defensive line duos that you see in the country. Looking at the snap counts from last year, and you see it on the film, those guys don't really come off the field. And you talk about getting the best out of Nash and Ty. You want to keep those guys fresh. I mean, Ty Robinson played 561 snaps. Nash played 504 snaps. They stayed healthy all year. They played phenomenal all year. But then when you look in the inside, outside of those two, Elijah Jeudy was next with 116. Like there's a massive discrepancy in terms of snap count. I think if you're Nebraska looking for that next step, developing some guys on the inside to give you that quality depth and keeping guys like Nash and Ty Robinson fresh throughout a duration of 4 quarters and 12 games of the season, I think it's another way that this Nebraska unit can grow heading into 2024.
Well, because you're right. You're just like the best defensive lines in college football all rotate. They all probably have 3 to 4 guys, especially on that interior, who kind of play something close to the same number of snaps. I mean, you look at Michigan, they pretty much had 2 waves, one drive, one unit, next drive, the other unit. You look at Georgia from like 2021, kind of a similar kind of style. And then you even look at Texas, had 3 to 4 guys who are really dynamic, really dominant on the inside. So that fundamentally is what you're looking for. You're looking for one of those other inside guys to come along. I think Riley Van Poppel is one guy you're certainly looking at. Played a fair amount as a true freshman. You kind of saw like the strength and the power wasn't quite there at times, did get moved off the ball, but he's a guy like you saw the flashes. You again, like saw the ability to use his hands and shed blocks. That's one thing that stood out. If he just comes along a little bit with his strength and his size, I think you're looking at him. And then frankly, Jeudy too. I was really surprised he didn't play more last year, but I'm with you. I think they need to better evenly space those reps. It should be probably closer to like 300 and 250 or something rather than like
and I'm not necessarily like banging the table. I mean, you want Ty Robinson and Nash playing as much football as they can because they're absolute studs, but you said it best. You look at the top defenses in the country and you always talk about star talent, but you look at that Michigan defensive line, what made them special is they were extraordinarily deep and they kept those guys fresh throughout a season. And Matt Rule always talking about winning the fourth quarter. Like it's going to help winning the fourth quarter when Nash and Ty are a little bit more fresh. And quite frankly, you saw the drop off. Like you saw why Nash and Ty Robinson played so much in 2023 because they were by far the best 2 guys on the inside.
And that was the issue. Like it's hard to like argue that. It's not like the coaches like we're just making the choice not to play these other guys. Those other guys just need to bring their level up closer to what Nash and Ty were doing. And that's hard in a sense because those 2 are really good. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be really competitive in the Big Ten at like the highest level, I think you need probably 2 rotations a day.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is, even if the snap counts remain the same, you just like to see elevated play from the guys who are being rotated in because it was noticeable the drop off in interior defensive line play when Nash and Ty Robinson weren't on the field. Again, Michigan didn't have that. Like if Mason Graham and Kenneth Graham weren't on the field, Chris Jenkins and Cam Good were getting it done. And so that's what you want to see from Nebraska on this inside. Now, Dill, going to the edge again, the biggest stride I think this Nebraska program can make is in that pass rush department. You have a lot of guys that you're kind of looking at breaking out. One thing before we start talking about the edge rushers that I think also would help Nebraska is running some more stunts on this defensive line, right? Tony White, when he wanted to get pressure, sent blitzes. Hey, I think you've seen a lot of programs the last couple of years at the college football level get those stunts going, running some games up front where you don't necessarily need to send 5-6 guys. You can go with your 4, but you're running stunts. You're putting the offensive line. That is a massive problem for college football offensive lines, like giving off stunts. They're just not good at it. And so you have the athletes to do it, right? Ty Robinson, Cam Leonard, phenomenal athletes.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, you got a guy like Cam Leonard who really does a good job rushing on the inside, has the athleticism, especially if he continues to develop, to probably be better on the edge too. Like, he's the type of guy I think you saw some moments when he was running some of those stunts and had the chance to, again, run a twist or whatever else you might do. Really good using his hands to shed blocks in working off that. But again, you're kind of right, because when they went base 4-man pass rush, it didn't work enough. And I don't think you should just stunt every play just to stunt, but you got to throw it in because it does keep offensive lines off.
And it's just another way to manufacture pressure without sending 5-6 guys. And Tony White liked to go to the blitz, and I want to see him continue sending pressure because I think that's what made Nebraska's defense so special was they are continually kind of getting after quarterbacks. But there are different ways to manufacture that pressure. And when you have as athletic of the defensive line as you have in Nebraska, you can run those stunts, or you run it with Tavondre Sweat, who's 360 pounds. You don't get to run stunts because they're not athletic enough to do so. I think Nebraska's personnel is athletic enough to kind of get those games, twist stunts going on that defensive line. Now, Dill, looking at the edge rushing position, this is a unit that you're extremely excited about. And we said we want to see a little bit more pass rush. You have a guy like MJ Sherman, Cam Lenhart, Prince Will U, Jamari Butler. I'll mention this one, and I'll let you. And I would love to hear from the Nebraska fans in terms of who's your guy, who's going to emerge the edge. James Williams, we talked about him a little earlier. You talk about a little bit of a different set of juice in terms of coming off the edge and really bursting, bending, using that length. He looks like a guy that could be playing in the NFL. And I think he's a walk-on, but he's a guy that you look at him. He's changed his body. He's got the length. I think he could be a guy that you might not necessarily hear the national media talking about, but Dill, I think he could be a guy in 2024 for Nebraska coming off that edge.
And frankly, I think you're looking a little bit like, well, can you have guys with varying skill sets? I don't think, again, Princely you and him are probably the only two who can really rush on the edge like that at an elite level. I mean, MJ Sherman, you kind of see good bull rushes and being able to push guys around and be more physical. Same thing with Jamari Butler. Yeah. But I do think, like, you're kind of right. If you have guys with different skill sets, I think it allows you, similar to what you were talking about with being able to run different games and stunts with your defensive line. If you have guys with multiple skill sets that you can all trust, I think you can just do more. You can keep offensive lines more off balance. And again, you're kind of right. James Williams, he is one of those unique guys on this Nebraska defense in terms of what he gives you with that flexibility, with that edge play. I kind of want to see him used more. You started to see him used more again, especially in that Michigan State game. I thought he played really well, but I think he can mix in a little.
It's one of the things I love about this Nebraska program. And I believe he was a scout team guy. And I think Matt Rule is always looking at the whole roster saying, who can help us on Saturdays? And it doesn't matter if you came in on scholarship, if you're playing on scout team, if you show in practice that you can be a guy that is going to help this program win football games on Saturday, you're going to get burned. You can't say that for a lot of other college football programs. Like, they are going to go to their scholarship guys and their guys that were supposed to be the starters. You see Nebraska continue to develop those kind of guys in the scout team. Matt Rule is very vocal. Like, I work with the scout team guys a ton because they're guys that can help us win football games as well. Dill, to end this, and this is a question to you and the Nebraska fans that are listening, drop it in the comment section. Who leads this team in sacks and quarterback pressures in 2024?
I mean, I think if you listen to me just talk, I think it's going to be Princely U. I think if they reach their peak, it is Princely U, because I do think he is their best pure pass rusher. But again, it's hard to argue that Ty Robinson probably won't be there. I mean, he was there last year. He's so dominant. He plays the guy. It's probably one of those two in my mind, But I do think if Nebraska's at their best, I want it to be.
I think it's Prince Willie. I was almost surprised as a guy that follows recruiting pretty closely. When Prince Willie committed to Nebraska, we hopped on and talked about it and said, this is a guy that has a ton of juice, is going to be very good for Nebraska. He might need a year. And the progression is, in my mind, a little ahead of schedule. And so what do you see in year 2? I think Prince Willie continues to put it together. I think he's going to be that guy that Nebraska really wants at that edge rusher position. Cannot wait to see him ball out again. This is a unit that it's a nice combination of you're getting a lot of veteran returners and Ty Robinson and Nash, but you're also getting some guys that are coming up the pipeline that are young and that have still kind of that maturation process to go through that I think really could break out in 2024. Unit that I'm extremely excited about, was great in 2023. Think it's going to be awesome in 2024. Offensive skill coming up next Sunday. Really excited to get into that one. Appreciate the Nebraska fans, as always, for rocking with the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.